Yeah, so thank you to the organizers for giving me an opportunity to speak amongst all the dignitaries present here. And the topic of interest here is hepatocellular carcinoma. The idea behind me being allotted the abstract presentation is that we might have something very fantastic and fascinating to come up with in the hepatocellular carcinoma front, where at one point of time we just had some procedures and one TKI to deal with. Subsequently, we had further TKIs to deal with, and now immunotherapy is coming up big time. So the abstract presentations which have been chosen here primarily focus on the combination therapy and the upcoming immunotherapy, which can be used to enhance our productivity when it comes to treatment, and increase the OS in patients of unresectable hepatocellular carcinoma per se. So the practice-changing abstract, which we'll be discussing in the next 15-20 minutes, will be focused on three. The first will be the Himalaya one, which combines tremelimumab plus durvalumab in a first-line treatment. This, they called it as T300 plus D, in short, to remember it. It was a very extensive study. It comes from MSKCC, the abstract per se. The next is, as we know, the keynote trials, which compared pembrolizumab in a second-line treatment in unresectable HCC. Now, pembrolizumab, nivolumab, both PD-1, PD-L1 things, they are taking up the landscape of management of cancers to a different level altogether. They are taking the world by the storm now. Practically, most of our cancers, we have some or the other point where we can definitely use pembrolizumab or nivolumab and definitely give a boost to the OS of the patient. The third is the launch trial, which focuses on combination of TKI with a TACE rather than TACE alone. So in the first line treatment. So we'll be just discussing the basic points and salient points of these three trials. And let's go ahead, please. Next, please. So as I told earlier, this is an MSKCC trial by Gasan Saab. So it was a phase 3 trial, open label multi-center study with tremelimumab and durvalumab as first line therapy in patients with unresectable hepatocellular carcinoma. Next, please. So the study population is to be seen here. This was a very filtered study population, which you can focus here. Patients had unresectable hepatocellular carcinoma, PCLC-B, not eligible for locoregional therapy, and the C portion as well. The ECOG here was good. The child book A was the clinical nature of the disease, and the patient was in a child book class A. No portal vein thrombosis was seen, and EGD was not required. Endoscopic twist was not required in that case. So this was a good number of patients which are studied. The power of the study was very high. That's 1,324 patients they studied. What they did, they segregated into 4 segments. They studied on 4 part of it. So the first was combination of T300 plus D. The second was durvalumab alone as monotherapy, given 1500 mg once a month, and was continued. And in the 300 plus D, they gave 300 mg dose first. That's the only one-shot dose. And subsequently, durvalumab was continued. The third was the standard with the continued 400 mg BID of sorafenib, the standard dose, the full dose. The fifth was, what they did is they broke the dose of tremelimumab into 4 equal parts once a month. And subsequently, durvalumab was continued as earlier. So the idea here was primary objective being the OS, overall survival, with the combination of tremelimumab and durvalumab 300 plus D versus isolated sorafenib plus TKI. Secondary objective, overall survival for durvalumab versus sorafenib. So that was the second part which they studied. So this is what we need to study, and they definitely had subgroups to assess. Again, they had additional secondary objectives of PFS, overall response rate, and other things which were assessed by the investigator according to the RECIST criteria. And safety definitely was studied in each of the trials. What were the side effects? What were the adverse effects? We'll have a slide for that, and we'll study that as well. Proceed. Next, please. So this was the baseline characteristics. What I need to focus here is basically the region they studied. They separated in Asia versus rest of the world. So this was a good separation they did, of which they did a good percentage, and subgroup analysis was much better. And most of the patients were in the unresectable hepatocellular carcinoma group. Here, what they've done is they had HBV, HCV equal population, and the ones with non-viral unresectable HCC was an equal population. And what you can appreciate is most of them, 99 to 98% of the characters, baseline characters, matched a child class A classification. So this is one thing to be noted. Rest subgroups also had a PD-L1 positivity, the AFP more than 400. That can be studied on a subgroup analysis, not on a larger scale that way. Next, please. So this was after the failure. They had second line studies as well. Next, please. It's not important that much. I won't go to that. Now, the primary objective, the overall survival for the T300 plus D combination versus sorafenib. So what we need to see here is the patient studies were 262 in this and 293 in that. Median overall survival with the combination was 16.4 months compared to 13.8 months. Though this 2.5 month median actually on a significant scale does lead to a good hazard ratio, does lead to good things, but definitely it's a step and a notch above the standard sorafenib treatment. That is what they need to mention and target it out. Probably in the time to come, they might refine it, the dosing might be refined. We might have a better OS. So it's just a starting step to the better OS part. That's what we need to focus here on. Next, please. Again, the same thing, please. Next. It was just a longer duration follow-up. The idea here was the OS was 30.7 months in a 3-year follow-up. That's what they suggested in the last slide. So if you see the forest plot here, comparing both the things, the only two areas wherein sorafenib has slight advantage is when it's in the female population versus and the ones in which HCV population was there. That favors more of a sorafenib being given. Rest all the baseline characteristics, be it patient male, be it a patient less than 65, more than 65, be it of an Asian or non-Asian origin, ECOG piece being 0 to 1, other criteria of AFP being more than 400, less than 400. The whole forest plot favors an activity, or the response criteria favors basically to the combination of T300 plus durvalumab. Next, please. So this is one of the points wherein we decide whether to give that patient a drug or not. The progression-free survival is very good or not. We like to hit it on first line or not. So PFS is one of the deciding criteria for us as oncologists in many of the cases. And definitely PFS is important to us, but the study didn't target much, but it was more of a secondary criteria. What they mentioned here is median PFS was more of in both the combinations was more or less same and not different. But this definitely had a slight edge on the isolated sorafenib. Next, please. Again, this is one of the secondary targets wherein they compared monotherapy with durvalumab compared to sorafenib. This had a clear margin advantage, 16.6 months OS versus overall survivors versus 13.8 months with sorafenib. So a definite and clear advantage of 3 months is definitely far better than giving sorafenib alone. So durvalumab definitely as a monotherapy fares better. This can be one of the practice-changing points in years to come or in the future to come when we have further larger trials with it or larger rationalizations and analysis with it. Because 3 months is a significant advantage when it comes to a patient for whom you are giving a first-line therapy. So definitely durvalumab fares better when it comes to OS compared to sorafenib in an isolated therapy. Plus, it has the advantage of being given once a month. Sorafenib has to be taken daily. So that means one thing is there. Third thing, which an advantage comes to my mind, which is not mentioned here, if a patient is receiving durvalumab, definitely the follow-up is much closer compared to the one receiving oral sorafenib. So that's one point which came to my mind on a clinical note. So I thought I'll share with all the seniors and elders and colleagues of mine. One thing that was there. Now the secondary objective, OS for durvalumab versus sorafenib. I told again, on a longer follow-up, definitely the same thing was that durvalumab fared better. Please next. So this was a tumor response. Few of the patients in the combination definitely showed a CR as well. So the percentage was much less, but still CR was evident, and overall response rate was a good one. Next, please. Yeah, so this is one point where we'd like to focus. So when in clinical practice, we want to target something, we want the side effects or the treatment-related adverse effects to be the minimal part. So compared to isolated sorafenib, the combination and the monotherapy definitely had lesser grade 3/4 side effects. That is what we need to know in clinical practice. So this will definitely shape a decision making when we have our patients who don't want much of side effects. Whatever life remaining is there, we need a good life. So to those kind of patients, definitely we can give a choice while counseling and sitting them with. But still, definitely data much has to come. It will definitely be a practice changing aspect in this case. Next, please. So conclusions, just to remember 3-4 points. It was a large study, as I told earlier, 1,327 people participated in it. And it had included a global heterogeneous population, Asian/non-Asian, we mentioned earlier. The median OS was 16.4 months for the combination versus 13.8 months for sorafenib. And it appeared to provide a long-term survival benefit with a landmark 36-month OS of 30.7% of cases. Now, overall survival of durvalumab monotherapy was non-inferior to sorafenib, a favorable risk-benefit profile. The combination regimen and durvalumab monotherapy may represent new treatment options for patients with unresectable HCC. So that was the bottom line statement. Definitely, it will be a practice-changing aspect in years to come. Please. Next. So coming to the next, this study, the keynote trial. So most of the keynote trials, are focused on the pembrolizumab. This study comes from China. What they did is they did pembrolizumab plus BSC versus placebo plus PSC. So how well does spending money on pembrolizumab fare when it comes to advanced HCC per se? Next, please. So what they did here, they studied around 450 cases, and in which 150 were in the placebo group and 300 were in the pembrolizumab group. Herein, the eligibility criteria of patient should have a confirmed HCC. The disease should be measurable as per SS. Patient should be child class A, PCLC stage C or B, not available or refractory to local regional therapy, and not amenable to resection as well. So this was the thing. The primary endpoint here again was the overall survival. Secondary endpoint, PFS, ORR, DOR, other things. Next, please. So the baseline characteristics, what we need to focus major here on basically is people from other populations were also considered, but the numbers were very less. The alpha fetoprotein level was also taken as a baseline character to be studied for subgroups. Other thing, they had enrolled people who were elderly as well. And most of the patients here were hepatitis B positive. This is one thing which we need to see. Other thing which we need to see here is, this is a second line study. This is not a first line study. The patient's treatment was second line. So most of the patients had received a sorafenib-based treatment. Next, please. So the OS, when it comes, 14.6 months versus placebo 13 months. That's what I need to just convey in this one. At the end of 2 years, what they came to the OS part. And this was definitely a modest overall advantage compared to placebo, but definitely it is an advantage. Next, please. Yeah, the PFS part. So PFS was not much great, not that changed, but definitely it had an effect on the OS. Next, please. Yeah, I'm sorry. I forgot to mention that PFS advantage was definitely there in the 11% of the population. So objective response, when they assessed, they definitely observed some CR with the patient receiving pembrolizumab compared to the ones who were on placebo. The numbers were not in a proper ratio. So definitely pembrolizumab fared better here, and a partial response is seen in, with most of the cases. And significant stable disease, significant population, or the number of studied population, that is around 40%, showed a stable disease. At least there was no progression per se. So in combination, when you combine stable disease, progressive disease, partial response, complete response. So when you combine these three percentages, it fares definitely better. It's more than 50% of the time of the population studied. Next, please. So overall survival based on meta-analysis of Keynote 394 and Keynote 240. What they recommend here is it's 14.2 months versus 12.5 months. Definitely a good advantage when it comes to OS. Next, please. So the adverse event summary here. So there was one death on pembrolizumab arm. Patient had immune-mediated hepatitis, was a lesser percentage, and grade 3 to 5 side effects were seen, and again a lesser percentage. So this was what he wanted to show here, or immune-mediated, when it comes to immune-mediated adverse effects in pembrolizumab part. And if it comes to treatment-related adverse effects, around 14% of the patients had treatment-related grade 3/5 side effects. And in 4% of the cases, they saw side effects which led to discontinuation. And 1% of the patients definitely were lost their life and couldn't continue treatment. So the numbers here were fairly low. If you come to the summary and conclusions, use of post-study anti-cancer therapy at progression may have attenuated the observed treatment effect. Meta-analysis showed pembrolizumab therapy provided a consistent treatment effect when it comes to placebo versus pembrolizumab. Adverse effect profile was manageable, and it's always a risk-benefit ratio, and pembrolizumab fares better when it comes to this. Next, please. So this is the last one. This is something really which is somewhat practicing. This decision also always used to haunt us whether we should add some TKI to the locoregional therapy treatment, whether it will benefit or not, the adjuvant part or not. There used to be Storm and Sharp trials which showed that there was no much adjuvant treatment benefits. So I used to read them way back in my DM days, but still. So there's a new trial which has come up. It has shown something like lenvatinib plus TACE versus lenvatinib alone as first line treatment. So this has definitely modified that part. So Storm and Sharp studied the sorafenib part. This is studying lenvatinib as a combination with TACE. So definitely things evolve. And this is again a Chinese study, a small part study, but it definitely shows the idea behind this was reflected in the next slide. Next, please. Next, please. Yeah. See, this was a potential treatment strategy to enhance the efficacy of lenvatinib for advanced hepatocellular carcinomas when combined with TACE. So the idea here was TACE reduced tumor burden in a short time. Post-treatment neovascularization may lead to tumor mets and recurrence. When combined with lenvatinib, it inhibited angiogenesis, inhibited tumor cell proliferation. So the idea was TACE plus lenva is definitely more effective than lenva alone. Next, please. Again, the schematic diagram of enrollment and all. So just a brief. What they stratified was tumor thrombosis there or not, body weight less than 60, more than 60, ECOG performance status, and there should be one measurable lesion as per RECIST criteria, single lesion less than 10 centimeter, number of multiple lesions less than 10, tumor burden less than 50%. All these studies carried child class A, child 2 grading criteria. Again, primary endpoint was OS. Number of patients studied in both the arms were equal. So this is the primary thing. Next, please.
Sir, you have 2 minutes to conclude your discussion, please.
I'm about to end, sir. I'm about to end, sir. So this is the baseline characteristics. Please proceed. Nothing much. Next, please. So when it comes to len plus TACE versus a len group, definitely, if you can see the table, you can definitely appreciate there was a significant benefit with partial response, stable disease, and complete response seen in a higher percentage of patients who had received a combination. So this is what is to be seen here, which is according to the RECIST criteria. Next, please. Yeah. Now, survival outcome, definitely OS was the last point. Median OS was 17.8 versus 11.5 months. The hazard ratio was 0.45. Without disease progression, the median PFS was 10.6 versus 6.4. Definitely faring better. So, what we do here when combined with lenvatinib plus TACE in local regional treatment. Next, please. Yeah, this is clear for what you see. I don't think so I should mention anything on that. Next, please. Yeah, so all grade adverse events were seen there, but these were manageable primarily, and they didn't have any effect on the OS per se. Next, please. Conclusively, lenvatinib plus ACE was safe and effective for patients with advanced hepatocellular carcinoma, demonstrating remarkable improvements in the OS, PFS, and overall response rate, as well as acceptable toxicity. Lenvatinib plus TACE represents a potential new first-line treatment option for patients with advanced SSC. Definitely fares much better on this front. So there are a few glitches in it. The first thing was that regulatory approval from FDA plus DGCI with this combination, despite being a good result. Then there was earlier study which had contradictory issues and brave. And the availability of tremelimumab in India, durvalumab is definitely available. Then again, keynote pembrolizumab showed a good result with pembrolizumab, but definitely it's a second line study. So no immunotherapy in the first line, when to give. So that's why we don't have a baseline to compare to. And the idea of lenvatinib plus TACE, again, hepatitis B patients are in a jiffy what to do. So these are some of the few queries which need to be answered still when you have these practice saving abstracts. So probably in the time to come, we will have an answer to these as well. So this was my time. Thank you very much for listening. And